price of petrol, you know what it was.
As our 2012,
if it's exchange rate, you know what it was.
As our 20, let's get it right.
There?
Let's get it right. As our 2012, we had a population of about 180 million. We had about 122 million living under poverty line. How many percentage was that? Right now, we have a population of about 228 million, and we have about 130. When you look at it, we have lesser percentage of people living under poverty line now than we had back 12 years ago, if we are being realistic.
Okay. Mr. Blason, I agree with you.
I don't need anybody. The figures are there. I don't need her to admit to it. The figures are there. That's why we are educated. That's why we are different from people who want to come and speak emotionally. Let's talk figures. Now, so, Chamberlain, let's get something.
When you talk figures,
let's get something right, Chamberlain.
Let me purchasing power parity of Nigerians now and then.
Let's get something right. Our current challenges, are not something that started right now. And it started on the ground that the way our national economics have been managed have been badly managed. And to fix our situation, to fix this situation, we have to do it differently. And that differently that we are doing, that Mr. President is leading, it is showing results that we are in the right direction. We are on track. And the figures are coming in that we are making the right decision, and we are protesting against that.
Yeah, Mr. Aide, isn't it hypocrisy, though, that, we talk about being on the right track? Because what's the major policy which we are talking about now? Is that the removal of fuel subsidy?
That's the most.
That's the most, sensitive of all of the policies. Yes. And we know that this is not the first time that a removal of fuel subsidy has been mooted.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, in 2012, which you mentioned, how many years ago, which you mentioned, fuel subsidy removal was mooted at that time, and it was for this same very reason.
Okay.
The fact that we could see ahead of time that this had the potential to cripple the economy if we did not do anything about it. And when we look at how much money we were actually committing to fuel subsidy versus how much we should be committing to, say, human development, education, health, all of these things, which the president now says he wants to do. But as you have also said, political parties, would find ways to politicize the issues. And at that time, it would seem that the AC or the APC, as the case might be, or ACN, as the party was then, played politics to its own admission,
not
or
totally.
To the admission of some of its members today with such an issue.
Not totally. Let's get something right. The situation by May 29, 2023, when the president removed subsidy, was very different from when it was 12 years ago. And I'll tell you why. There was no PIA, Petroleum Industry Act, as at 12 years ago when subsidy was to be removed. You cannot deregulate a sector without policies. Without laws, yes.
What's the point you're making there?
The point I'm making is, if you want the private sector, if you want your sector to be globally competitive, there's going to be governing rules, there's going to be policies,
yeah, but there was
there's going to be legal framework.
In the President Buhari's regime, there was PIA.
Exactly,
he didn't remove subsidy.
No,
he suspended that provision.
You see, by the budget that this government inherited in 2023, as of that May, June, the subsidy payment, there was no accommodation for it.
Well, let me get your argument. Your argument now is that, subsidy removal could not have been implemented then because there was no PIA. However, now we have a PIA, yet we're not very clear in what direction we're currently in the oil industry. Do you agree with that statement or not?
I don't.
You don't?
No,
because people have asked, what sort of company is the NNPCL? People don't know whether it's a publicly listed company. They say, some people, shareholders are, government. It's a government entity, but they're not they're not really clear on how the government, or let's say the company owned by Nigerians, really operates. They're not clear whether, because as we know today, the NNPC is the sole importer of petrol products into this country. There's been lots of conversation around the fact that subsidy, in fact, has returned as a result of what has happened with the exchange rate. However, there's been silence on that. So even for those who are in government who still say, subsidy is gone, or who still maintain what the president says, are they really being truthful and transparent to what is currently going on in the country?
Let's get something right. As at the time, we all complain about our debt servicing to revenue ratio in this country. We had about 97% of our revenue being used to service debt. complain about it.
What is it today?
68% in 1 year. It has dropped to 68%. Revenue has increased in the oil and gas industry. Just first quarter of this year, we recorded trade surplus of 6.5 trillion naira. And the non-oil sector contributed majorly to that. There is an improvement in the agricultural export. There is an improvement in technology export. There is an improvement in service export. There is an improvement in the industrialization sector. See, the fact is, we have a GDP that is growing at 3.1%. We have a stock market that is the best in the world. These are all at macroeconomic level. These are all indices to show that we are attracted. Let me submit, Chamberlain. You asked a crucial question. Let me submit.